One of the hottest teams in college football coming into this season, the Florida Gators. Let's do a college football preview for Billy Napier's squad, ready to take the world by storm. First up, we're going to talk about the stars, a few storylines for the program, losses and additions to the roster, and then last but certainly not least, we are going to talk about the X Factor game for the Gators and a record prediction going game by game, wins and losses. Let's hop right into it. Now, I could talk all about this Florida roster. I know a ton of information about it. This is one of my favorite teams in college football, but I'm just going to name you three guys to look out for on the offensive side of the football. Starting with the most important player on this roster, DJ Lagway. Sophomore season incoming. Lagway showed unbelievable amounts of potential last year. He has got a cannon. Now, he only threw for 1,900 yards and 12 touchdowns, but let me tell you what, the athletic traits are off the chart. This guy knows how to get the job done. He is a finisher when he's healthy, and that's what matters. So moving on in this offensive group, we've got the best center in college football. All-American last season, started every single game, and is ready to start every single game this season, Jake Slaughter. Unbelievable pass protector, great command of the offensive line. I mean, you want to talk about the basics, sure. IDing the mic, he's great at it. But what he's extremely good at is keeping that pocket undisrupted. Giving DJ Lagway a clean look is going to be unbelievably important this upcoming season. I'll talk about that in just a little bit. But then let's talk about the wide receiver core. One guy to look out for, Eugene Wilson, a router. An absolute router. Now, last year, he was hurt for the majority of the season, but in his freshman season, maybe a redshirt freshman season, but in his freshman season, 500 yards, 6 touchdowns. I love the footwork. I think he's going to be DJ Lagway's number one target this upcoming season. As of right now, he's my wide receiver one, but I'll talk about a couple of additions to this roster in just a little bit. But moving on to the defensive side of the football, in my opinion, this is going to have to be the side of the football that carries a lot of the weight for Florida this upcoming year. Caleb Banks, defensive tackle, one of the best in the SEC. 4.5 sacks last year as a defensive tackle is quite impressive. Now, I was talking about Jake Slaughter and his pocket protection. Let's talk about Caleb Banks and his pocket disruption. This guy knows how to blow up offensive guards, centers, you name it. He can get after it and just force the quarterback out of the pocket, and then they meet edge rusher Tyreek Sapp. 7 sacks last year, a pure power type guy. I believe he's the son of NFL legend Warren Sapp. I am unbelievably excited to see how he does this upcoming season with Caleb Banks. This front seven was a little bit underrated in my own mind, but I look at these guys and I think that this could be a top 5, maybe top 10 defense, not only in the SEC, but the country. Last but not least, shoring up the back end of this secondary is Jordan Castles, safety. Last year, he did it all, but in the pass game, he did a great job. 9 pass deflections, and then, of course, was able to hop in on the run game, 55 tackles to pair with that. I think this roster is top 10 talented, but it is all going to depend on storyline number 1, DJ Lagway's health. Florida last year was 6-0 when DJ Lagway started and finished a game. Now, some of those opponents were guys or teams like Samford, so, I don't want to get too far into it, but look at some of these games last year, like the Georgia game. Florida with Lagway in the first half, they didn't have like an offensive renaissance. They weren't putting up 30 points and a half. They did, although, have a lead, and that is what is important. But the issue that I want to point out is that Lagway not only didn't have the number 1 reps last summer into fall camp going into the season, because last year, Graham Mertz was the starter to begin Florida's year. But secondly, he was hurt throughout the season, so he had off and on gameplay and tried to compete with Mertz at the beginning of the season. And then he misses almost all of spring ball with mystery injuries that Florida never really clearly identified. And then last but certainly not least, heading into this fall, he misses or is missing some time with his players, not only on the field, but off the field with an injury to his foot. We've seen him in a walking boot. I haven't kept up 1000% up to date with his injury, but the whole point of this storyline is that if Lagway is injured or half injured, this Florida team is extremely limited. But if he is healthy, this is a top 10 football team in the country. Now, I will talk about the issue with this team in just a little bit overall, but the thing I want to get into now is the losses and additions to this roster. The losses, first up, Shamar James, linebacker. I think he was the leading tackler, maybe second in tackles, 64, 2 sacks, 3 pass deflections, an interception, a forced fumble. When you talk about a guy that can do it all, Shamar James was that guy. He gets drafted to the Cowboys, and then a couple of guys on the offensive side of the football, Elijah Badger and Shamir Adike. These were the 2 leading receivers for Florida last year. A combined over 1,500 yards and 6 touchdowns. DJ Lagway was looking to these guys with the deep ball. I think Elijah Badger had damn near close to 20 yards a catch. So in terms of slinging the rock, maybe they're a little limited this upcoming season, being able to take the top off the defense due to the loss of these guys. But then the last guy that I want to talk about is a player that missed a good portion of last season, Jason Marshall Jr., who would have been a massive help to Florida's roster this upcoming season. I thought he was one of the best cornerbacks in the country. Once again, missed a significant amount of time, but still gets drafted to the Dolphins, I believe in the 5th round. 11 pass deflections in his junior year. Clamp City, honestly, when talking about Jason Marshall Jr. So those are the losses to this roster. The additions, there's a couple that I want to talk about. The real thing about this Florida roster is they didn't really hit the portal hard, and they're not starting a ton of freshmen. This is a unit that is cohesive. It has a lot of continuity and consistency. And in a day and age where change is the main topic of discussion in college football, I think continuity and consistency are major strengths. There are a couple of additions that I do want to talk about specifically to the wide receiver core. Now, first up, J. Michael Sturdivant is a wide receiver from UCLA. I haven't seen a ton of his game. Apparently, he was getting some NFL buzz in the offseason, but he transfers to Florida. Could he have a breakout year? Absolutely. I think he's got the physical traits to do it, and maybe he could end up being one of those deep ball guys. Now, to pair with him in this wide receiver room, of course, is Eugene Wilson, but also true freshman Dallas Wilson, who's gotten a ton of hype. Now, he has an injury right now. Is he out for the majority of the season or even all of the season? I think that's still to be determined, but I guess we shall see. I'm super excited to see what he has to offer. In the spring game, he exploded on the field. He has unbelievable amounts of talent. When I think about what he could do for this Florida team, I think about what Cam Coleman did for Auburn, what Nick Marsh did for Michigan State, what Ryan Williams did for Alabama. Now, is he a Jeremiah Smith? I won't put anybody in that category. Jeremiah Smith could probably be a top 5 NFL wide receiver right now. So Dallas Wilson is not that quite yet. We'll see if he can progress throughout his career, but those are the additions that I want to talk about on this roster. The last 2 storylines that I want to mention. Billy Napier, back in November, I think Florida had a losing record or an even record, and there was a lot of talk about he's done because Florida hadn't beaten a good team all season. They had lost to Texas. They had lost to Georgia. They had lost to Texas A&M and Miami. They got the doors blown off them against Miami. And so a lot of fans, I'm sure a lot of boosters were talking about Billy Napier is out of here. But the athletic director of Florida, Scott Strickland, came out on November 7th and said, Billy Napier is our guy, giving a ton of momentum and confidence to this coaching staff and this roster. And what do they do with that? They go out and win the last 4 games in a row. They beat a ranked Ole Miss. They beat a ranked LSU. They beat their rival in Florida State. And then they close out the season in good fashion by beating Tulane in their bowl game. I think that's extremely impressive. Now, is that to say that Billy Napier is absolved of potentially getting fired this year? Absolutely not. If Florida has some kind of disaster season and goes 4-8 or maybe even 5-7, I think Billy Napier could be out of here. But I don't expect that from Florida. I guess we'll see with potentially a factor of DJ Lagway's health if any of that happens. Now, to wrap this up storyline-wise, let's talk about this is a gauntlet schedule. I just talked about it in a previous video with Oklahoma and some other teams. I am not happy about where Florida ranks with strength of schedule. Where do they rank? Number 1. They have the toughest schedule in the country. Now, with that being said, there are major downsides to having to play LSU, Miami, Georgia, Texas, Florida State, Ole Miss, Tennessee. There's a lot of downsides to having to play those games. But the upside is, I think if Florida can go 9-3 in these games, they are college football playoff bound. I mentioned it in a video with Oklahoma. If Oklahoma can go 9-3 and beat a bunch of ranked teams and then lose to playoff teams, they'll be in the playoffs. The exact same theory applies to Florida. As long as they lose to LSU, Miami, Texas, Georgia, maybe even Ole Miss or Tennessee, I think that this Florida team will be playoff bound. So 9-3 is the goal. Let's talk about the X Factor game. To me, it's at Miami. At LSU in game number 3 is going to be extremely tough, and it's not a game that I'm willing to sit here and tell you that Florida can win. Or they can win it, but will they win it? I put that in doubt. So in game number 4 for the season, can they get some momentum back and beat Miami? At Miami, Carson Beck is there. There's a ton of other players at Miami that I love. Ruben Bain Jr., Mark Fletcher Jr. I like Mario Cristobal and his physicality that he likes to play his teams with. Florida, if they can beat their in-state rival, get revenge from last season, try to use that as their recruiting opportunity like Miami did in the Swamp last season, that could be a major momentum builder heading into the rest of the schedule because, like I said, it's a gauntlet. If you lose to Miami, you're 2-2. You basically have to play damn near perfect football for the rest of the season, and I don't necessarily know if the Florida Gators are up to the challenge, especially with the factor like DJ Lagway's health. So now, let's hop into my record prediction. Let's see how positive or negative I am about the Gators. So game number 1, Long Island University. I don't even know if diehard Florida fans will be watching this game. I just don't see it. Nobody wants to watch, an SEC team absolutely brutalize an FCS school. Second game, Group of 5 opponent, USF. Gave a few teams like Miami and Alabama trouble last season. Could they do it again? I love Byron Brown, the quarterback. I like Alex Golish, their offensive-minded head coach. He loves the spread. That's not really, when I'm talking spread, I'm talking veer and shoot type spread. Is that something that, SEC coaches see a lot? Not necessarily, but I do think Florida can take care of business there. They match USF's physicality well. I do not think that Miami did that last season, so I think that's an easy win for the Gators. At LSU, the first tough test in this gauntlet, I don't think that's a victory for Florida. I think that DJ Lagway is going to struggle on the road. I have not mentioned it quite yet, but I will in a few videos that I do in the future. I think this LSU secondary might be the best in the country. They have been absolute garbage over the last few years, but in year 2 with their defensive coordinator and tons of talent coming in through the transfer portal and some other guys developing throughout their system, I think this LSU defense is going to be star-studded. That's a tough win or a tough loss for Florida. Going into Miami, game number 4. Will Florida actually win it and carry some momentum into the rest of the season? In my opinion, as long as DJ Lagway is healthy, the answer is absolutely. I think they can win that game in dominant fashion. I am not a fan of Carson Beck. I like the rest of this Cristobal team. Their defense last year was extremely suspect throughout the rest of the season. Florida just kind of fell flat on its face at the beginning of the year. This team is much different than the team that Miami played at the beginning of last season. I think Florida can win this game. Moving into the next extremely tough test. Texas comes to town. That's a game that was uncompetitive for Florida last year. And I think Billy Napier is going to do everything in the wheelhouse to try to get the Gators motivated for this game to win and make a statement that Florida is here to play playoff football. Can they do it? I think that they can. I am calling an upset right here, right now. Florida will get the best of Texas in this game. That is a major W. But then moving into the next game at Texas A&M, a game that Florida did not play well in last year, got out-physicaled. There's only a few teams this upcoming season that I think have a better offensive line than Florida, and Texas is one of them. I genuinely think that A&M has one of the best O-lines in the country. They win at the line of scrimmage. Their defensive line is stacked with talent. I love what they've got going right now. I like Mike Elko, even though he's defensive-minded. I think A&M wins this game. So, moving into the rest of this season, I believe now, let's take a look at this record. Florida is 4-2. Their 2 losses versus LSU and A&M. Probably top 10 losses. Mississippi State, easy W. I mean, Mississippi State's not only one of the worst teams in the SEC, maybe one of the worst teams in the country. Definitely bottom half of the FBS. I think that's an easy win for Florida. It was last year. Next game, Georgia. Rivalry game, as usual. Florida-Georgia line. They're in Jacksonville. The margaritas are flowing. Georgia, of course, has had an easy time, or quote-unquote an easy time, getting rid of Florida in the Kirby Smart era. But I think that changes in this game. I think as long as DJ Lagway is healthy, I could say that for almost every single game on the schedule. But if DJ Lagway is healthy, this Florida team, in my opinion, is better than Georgia. And they will outright win this game and carry on to at Kentucky. A tricky road test. But Mark Stoops has had a few disappointing seasons at Kentucky. Maybe he's on the hot seat by this point, and some players are looking out the window next to the transfer portal. This is a game that Florida will win. Next up, at Ole Miss. Another tricky game. I think when a lot of people think about Ole Miss, they think about Jordan Ta'amu, I believe, quarterback there, Shea Patterson, Jackson Dart, offensive-minded teams that are ready to throw up a ton of points. I don't think that's going to be Ole Miss this upcoming year. I think they're going to take a step back offensively, and defensively, they do really well against the pass. I don't necessarily think they have the physicality to match the dominance of Florida's offensive line. So even though it's on the road against a great coach like Lane Kiffin, I think the Gators can absolutely win that one. They did it last year against Jackson Dart and Trey Harris and a ton of these other talented Ole Miss players that went to the NFL. I don't know if Ole Miss can reload like an Alabama or a Georgia. So that's a win. Next up, Tennessee. Rivalry game per the usual, but may I add, with Nico Iamaleava and at home, Tennessee had to take Florida to overtime to beat them. And that was with a freshman DJ Lagway. In year 2, at home in the swamp late in the season, I think the Florida Gators are going to dominate this game. And then to close out the year, your rival in Florida State comes into the swamp. Once again, I think Florida State will make a better attempt at having a winning record this upcoming season, but they are nowhere near the atmosphere of the Florida Gators this upcoming year. So with this gauntlet schedule, ladies and gentlemen, I have the Florida Gators going 10-2. Now, that being said, could this schedule easily have them going 7-5? Absolutely. I mean, I put on some major upsets here. On the road at Miami, Texas at home, Georgia in the neutral site game. Could all 3 of those games be losses? 100%. But I love the momentum that's being carried over from last season. I like the continuity with the majority of this offense returning offensive line-wise. And I like the defense a lot. I think the front 7 is going to do a good job at tampering back some of the physicality that the SEC has to offer. So as of right now, as long as DJ Lagway is healthy, 10-2 is my record prediction. And Florida will indeed be college football playoff bound. And if the cards are right, they could be SEC championship bound. So be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you next time.